Good evening and welcome. This is a meeting of the Special Education Advisory Committee of the Halton District School Board for Wednesday, May 21st, 2025. First, we will start with a roll call to record who is in attendance. Please answer yes or present when your name is called.
Kate Lombacher, Association for Bright Children. Present. Amanda Winch, Autism Ontario.
Present.
Jennifer Mayer from Autism Ontario Centre for Regrets. Yelena King, Centre for Diverse Learners. Sierra Kernick, Community Living Burlington. Melissa Dockeray, Easter Seal Society.
Present.
Sophia Siddiqui, Halton Down Syndrome Association. Aaron Spruill, Voice.
Present.
Kaisa Klassen, Member at Large.
Present.
Katie Schleifer, Member at Large. Present. Tara Conley, Member at Large. Naveed Ahmed.
Good evening.
Carol Baxter, Trustee.
Good evening.
Joanna Oliver, Trustee. Trustee Zhang.
Present.
Superintendent Ruddock.
Present.
Principal Spruin.
Present.
And we have Summer Sweetman on communications.
Now we will begin our meeting by honoring the land. We begin by acknowledging the land and our responsibility to care for and respect all that provides us with life. This land upon which the HDSB is situated is on the ancestral treaty and tidal lands of the Anishinaabeg, Ojibwe, Michizagig Nation, now known as the Mississaugas of the Credit. Michizagig territory in the past and present continues to host both Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. The HDSB is committed to continuous knowledge building with respect to actions that address and resolve the ongoing impacts of colonialism. We do this by learning and understanding the true history, treaty obligations, duties, and responsibilities, and Indigenous rights while actively maintaining mutually beneficial relationships and collectively respecting and caring for the land. First, we will approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Would anyone like to move a motion to approve the agenda?
Aaron Spruill will.
Thank you. Would anyone like to second this motion? Kaisa, thank you. Are there any modifications or amendments that need to be made to the agenda? Is there any opposition to the agenda as it stands? If you oppose the agenda, please indicate that now. Okay, none being seen, the agenda is approved unanimously. Next is the approval of our April 23rd, 2025 meeting minutes. Are there any errors or omissions? Would anyone like to move a motion to approve the minutes? Oh, Amanda, do you want to approve or do you have an amendment?
I'm approving.
Oh, okay, thank you. Would anyone like to second this motion? Perfect, thanks, Sierra. All right. None being seen. Oh, wait, sorry. I'm jumping ahead. Is there any opposition to the minutes as recorded? If so, please indicate that now. All right, none being seen, the April 23rd, 2025 meeting minutes are approved unanimously.
Okay, we'll now move into our action items for the evening. And first we have a presentation by Aaron Spruill, our representative from Voice, on the disability tax credit. Take it away, Aaron. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Just give me a minute here to share my screen. Oh. Google Meet, always. There it is. Okay, so we had our annual voice conference a few weeks ago, and this is a topic that always comes up with our families, and everyone's always wanted to learn a little bit more about this. And so often times, the meeting organizers will try and get someone from one of the banks, like a financial planner, someone from the CRA, to come and speak on this. So, being unable to find anyone competent, they asked, I raised my hand and said I would do it since I am a tax professional. I just don't deal with disability tax credit too often. So I did some research and, I had looked into it for my own personal reasons as well. So I put together this presentation and I thought it might be useful for everyone else. It was originally geared towards families with children with hearing loss, but I modified it slightly, so you might see some specific points in there about that. But this is, I tried to make it more general and take out some of that specificity. So so understanding the disability tax credit, this has all been circulated. Understanding, well, I'm not going to go through the entire agenda. It's in here. We're going to spend most of the time, I think, speaking about the RDSP and the disability savings grant and the bonds, because those are really the biggest benefits associated with getting the disability tax credit. And actually, I should put in here, but there's some other indirect benefits you can get with it as well. Oh, I'm not. I'm sorry about that.
I could ask
there
Conan
we
to
go.
provide some
You know,
text
I-
support, but it won't be from me.
Thank you for telling me that. Okay. I clicked share, but you had to select the window to share. So apologies for that. Okay. So I mean, this is the disability tax credit is like anything in tax. It's very formulaic. There has to be specific rules that allow you to qualify. And these are some of the, well, I'll get into the requirements for it a little bit later. But I mean, this slide here talks about how, it helps individuals with a severe and prolonged hearing loss reduce the amount of income tax they pay to offset some of the significant costs we have. But I think this applies to parents of children with any kind of disability or exceptionality. There's a lot of, whether it's speech therapy or occupational therapy or, physiotherapy, anything like that. There's a lot of costs associated with having a child with a disability. And I think that is the object of the tax credit, is to, not specifically say, well, here's the expenses that you can deduct from your income, but it's just a blanket amount that you automatically qualify for each year. Now it's a non-refundable tax credit, and so it reduces your taxable income, and you're not going to get a direct cash benefit from it if you're not already subject to tax. My wife is I'm surrounded by educators here, but my wife said, well, what's a non-refundable tax credit? I was like, well, it's a tax credit that reduces your taxable income. And she's like, well, you can't use the definition of the tax credit. You can't say tax credit when you're trying to define it. And so I was trying to find a way to say, okay, so education not being my forte, essentially, a refundable tax credit would be where if you qualify for this, you get a refund from the government regardless of whether you're subject to tax in that year. So if you had zero income and you file your return, you click the thing, a refundable tax credit would give you that refund regardless. A non-refundable tax credit means that, supposing you paid $500 in tax, well, you're going to get some portion of that $500 back when you qualify for the disability tax credit. And actually, one of the interesting things about this is that depending on when you apply for it, part of the form that is, that you have to fill out to apply for the credit, your medical professional will be asked, when did this, disability or whatever it is, when did this begin? And if it was 5 years ago, the CRA and you qualify, the CRA will actually go back 5 years and reassess all your returns, and you'll qualify for it back then. So that's, I mean, if you're, if you're a new parent and struggling with, in our case, understanding hearing loss and trying to get therapy and hearing aids and cochlear implants and all this stuff, it can be overwhelming. And oh, am I going to qualify for a tax break? Isn't always the first thing on your mind. So, like I said, you can still qualify for that 5 years later, if it was a case that it was from birth, let's say. So what are the benefits? I mentioned earlier that it reduces the amount of tax that you pay. The difficult thing with any kind of tax is that we never talk in terms of the amount that you're going to get back, because every single person's tax situation is different. Everyone has a different marginal rate. So there's a credit that you qualify for, but that might not translate in the same amount of dollars for me as it would for somebody else. But generally speaking, at the lowest marginal tax rate, you would be getting in Ontario, if you take the federal and the corresponding Ontario deduction that you would get automatically if you qualify for the federal, you would be looking at about a $3,100 refund. But like I said, it's going to always depend on your individual situation. One of the key benefits, in my view, is the Registered Disability Savings Plan. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And the transferability of it. So if you qualify for the disability tax credit, so let's say my daughter qualified for it, she's entitled to the deduction, but most 14-year-olds don't have a lot of income, so it's transferable to parent or caregiver. Okay, so the Registered Disability Savings Plan, and before I go on, anyone sticks up their hand or if anyone just asks a question, please feel free. I don't necessarily have to be talking the entire time. Is there a timer I should be watching? I get talking sometimes. Will someone get the hook out if I go on for too long? So I put a star here after I gave this talk to our conference because I'm not a financial planner, and if anyone's considering investing in an RDSP, you should definitely talk to a financial planner. Typically, I think if you just talk to someone at your bank, they could probably handle it for you. So if you qualify for the disability tax credit, that's basically the, I think, one and only requirement to qualify for the RDSP. Excuse me. It's a long-term savings plan that's designed to help Canadians with disabilities and their families save for the future. So it's a lot like a tax-free savings account. Kind of the two main types of long-term savings: retirement savings plans, registered retirement savings plans, and tax-free savings accounts. RRSP, you can save tax today but pay it later. TFSA, or tax-free savings account, you put after-tax money in, but it can grow, and then you never have to pay tax on it again when you withdraw from that. And so that's what an RDSP is like. It's an amount that you can put in after-tax dollars, but if it grows, if it doubles, if it triples, if it quadruples, you don't have to pay additional income tax on the capital gains in that plan when they're taken out. So that's where I say this third point here. They're not tax deductible when you put them in, like in an RSP, but they grow tax-free. But the really great thing about them is the government contribution. So unlike a TFSA, when you put in your own money, and that's it, with the RDSP, the government will contribute a portion of that for you as well. So I'll talk about that on the next slide. And just here to note, the lifetime total contribution limit is $200,000. You can make up till age 59. Okay, so what are these matching amounts? The Disability Saving Grant, this is a matching contribution that the government does. So now if your family net income is under, so I guess your combined total family net income is under this 111,733. The government will contribute $3 for every $1 that you contribute on that first $500. So if you put in $500, the government puts in $1,500 for you. After that, the government puts in $2 for every $1 that you put in, meaning that for a $1,500 contribution, the government's contributing $3,500. So if you think of it in investment terms, you put in $1,500, you're automatically getting, in year one, a 233% return on your investment, which is pretty darn good. Now, if your family net income is above that $111,000 threshold, not as lucrative, but still you're getting 100% return because the government matches you 1-for-1 on that grant. So, and then the lifetime maximum total grant is $70,000. But these can make a big difference. I think my screen is still being shared here. Because I'm a numbers nerd, I just put together a little spreadsheet to show at a conservative 6% interest rate, which, if you put this into some kind of a simple, like S&P 500 tracking mutual fund at your bank, over the long term, you probably far exceed $6,000. On this one side where you're getting the 1-to-1 matching grant, if you just contribute $1,000 every year up to age 59, at retirement, age 65, $1.3 million. And so that's putting in $50,000. The government puts in $50,000, and through the magic of compounding growth, we're getting $1.3 million. On the other side, if you qualify for the higher matching grant amount, you contribute $1,500, and the government contributes $3,500, investing in the same, mutual fund at a 6% annual growth rate. If you only max out the grant, this is up to age. I'm assuming you start at age 3, right? You could do a different one, but if you start at age 3 and do these contributions, only up to age 22, when the grant is maximized, that's a $70,000, and you don't contribute any more, $2.4 million. So that's why I think that this is such a great tool for families to help for savings. So let's see here. Let's see, nothing more on that one. Okay, so the Canada Disability Savings Bond is unlike the grant, where this is an amount that can be contributed automatically, regardless of whether you contribute or not. So, on the previous slide, the family net income threshold was 111,000 or something. Here, if it's 36,000 or less, you automatically get $1,000 put into it a year for you. But you have to go to the bank. You have to open the account. You have to apply for it. So you have to get that so that the government will know that you've got the account and they'll put it in. Between 36,000 and between 36,000 and 55, it's kind of a linear sliding scale from that 1,000 down to nothing. So once you hit 55,805, which I'm looking at it now, I'm guessing is probably pretty close to half of the 111 from the previous slide. Once you hit that 55, then there's no automatic bond, and the lifetime maximum bond amount is 20,000. Okay, so how do you apply for the disability tax credit? This is what, at least in the hearing loss community, is the most challenging part of it, just because of the way that the form is, the way that the form is worded. It's essentially something like, well, if a child can hear you when they're aided in a quiet room by someone who they're familiar with, then you don't qualify. I'm simplifying it, but that's sort of how it's worded. That's not really the intent of the legislation, but it's how it's worded. And so a lot of audiologists and doctors and nurse practitioners who look at this, they say, well, I don't know, your kid answered my questions. So I have to say that, yeah, they can answer my questions, they can hear me and understand me in a quiet room. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. I admit that I haven't, gone in to look at all the other, categories and how they work. But essentially, you have to have either your doctor, your nurse practitioner, or your audiologist for hearing loss. Now, doctors and nurse practitioners can fill it out for any categories, but for other disabilities, for example, low vision, you can get an optometrist to fill that out for you. Let's see, I brought it here as well. Here's the actual form. So categories that are eligible: vision, speaking. So a speech and language pathologist could fill this one out. Hearing, walking, eliminating, feeding, dressing, mental functions necessary for everyday life, and mental function. Oh, that's continued. Sorry. And then there's this one: cumulative effect of significant limitations. And that's the one I'm going to talk about next. Here, one of the interesting things I've, I got some advice because it can be challenging to get this. I explained the hearing loss one. I'm not sure about the other categories, but it's a little bit confusing because the legislation says you have to have a marked restriction. So what's a marked restriction, right? That's what these guidelines around say. Well, if they can hear you in a quiet room, if someone's familiar to them, then you qualify. Well, especially an audiologist, if they're doing their job setting your hearing aids correctly, they should be able to understand you in a quiet room. That would mean almost nobody qualifies for this unless you're profoundly deaf. But you need to have a marked restriction. That's what the legislation says. Everything else is just guidelines. So it comes down to the definition of a marked restriction. So you kind of need your doctor, your nurse practitioner, or your other health provider to work with you, and you have to. You can't. I wouldn't recommend, if you're trying to go for this, to just go in and say, "Hey, would you like to fill in this form?" Do some research. Look at it. See if there's been any court cases around this. Oftentimes, the CRA will publish guidance, like administrative guidance, that explains for your particular exceptionality or disability what it is that they're looking for. So you've got to do your research, and you've got to work with your health practitioner to say, hey, look, this is all the things that they're saying that require. So you can give examples of how, even though, my kid can hear you in a quiet room, it takes them longer to process that. And, in your opinion, they take longer to answer your questions than a typical hearing kid would. So like these are examples of the questions that they get asked. Provide examples that describe how your patient's ability to hear a familiar person in a quiet setting is impaired despite the appropriate use of therapy, medication, and devices. And this is the tricky one. Is your patient unable to hear, or do they take an inordinate amount of time to hear so as to understand? And that is at least 3 times longer than someone of some. So you can see how complicated and convoluted and confusing this can be, even for health practitioners to fill out. So that's my my recommendation. And then another bit of advice that I got was that, to the extent that you can, don't just go for one category. If your child is deaf and hard of hearing, and they also have a bit of a deaf accent that makes it difficult for people to understand them sometimes, maybe get a speech pathologist to fill that out. If you can get 2 or 3 of these sections filled out, the CRA is going to go look at that and say, okay, this kid is definitely is qualified, or they qualify for that one which is a cumulative effect of significant limitations. So you have a lot of significant limitations that combined, 2 or more of them, that's this part here, are equivalent to a marked restriction. Which on their own they might not be marked restrictions, but anyway. So That's my presentation. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Go ahead.
Just having been someone that's been on this program for my son for a long time, just two things I want to add. Number one is that the disability tax credit, they often ask you to do reassessments, which is quite frustrating. So if you can, it gets to a certain point where you can ask for a 10-year application. And so instead of renewing every 5 years, you can go to 10. And if you've done 3 10s, they'll give you a lifetime. So they are a little bit like you have to do we've done 2 reassessments and my son's 19. So we're waiting to get to that point where they don't keep asking us to fill out the paperwork, which would be nice. So that's number one. And secondly, similar to that, you mentioned it very well, but after they turn 18, if you've been receiving the grant amount, but not the bond because of parents' family income, as soon as that individual turns 18, their income now is below the $36,000, so they become eligible for the bond. But you actually have to call your bank and get them to apply for that bond for you. It doesn't automatically start because their income is 0. They have to have filed taxes in the year that they turn 17 and or 18, and that documentation has to be used to apply for them to apply for the bond, which they will get because they make less money. There's something else I was thinking. That's it, I think. That's great, though.
That's great to know. I didn't know that. I'm going to pass that on to our families about the bond because I haven't gone through it, so I don't know. The other thing I was going to say was, and I think it's going to be different for every disability because from what I've heard, for hearing loss, typically they give it to you for 5 years as a child, and then and part of the thing, not a lot of hearing loss is temporary. So once you've qualified for it the first time, and after 5 years, if you requalify, then they give it to you for life. So I guess they must have different rules for different.
And to be honest with you, that might have changed. Like they change, and then it could have changed, to be honest. But what I was told originally is that you have to do 3 sort of applications. Like first is the 5, and then when you renew at 5, you then have to do 10, and then 10, and then you're eligible.
Oh, okay.
But I could be wrong on that for sure. The other thing I was going to add, though, is to assume you open it up at a bank, to assume that somebody at the local branch has any idea about the RDSP. They do not. You actually have to call sort of head office at whatever bank you're working with. And if you're moving around, like which funds you're investing to or you're changing anything, at the branch level, they surprisingly know very little about it. So be prepared to take those steps to call into, I guess, the special RDSP office at whatever branch or bank you're dealing with.
Yeah, and I would imagine you have to look carefully at what you're putting it into as well, right? Like that's why I put the star around. Talk to a financial advisor who can tell you about, okay, what do you feel comfortable investing in? But you don't want to just leave it in there in cash because it's not going to appreciate at all, right? It should be at least in some kind of a money market fund that'll earn a small amount of interest, and that's almost 0 risk, or you can invest in.
Good. Sorry, I had 2 more
crazy
trains of
equities
thought.
or something.
Just to add while we're getting it out there. Number 1 is that other family members can make contributions. So grandparents can put into it. If the grant amount has been hit already for that year, they don't no more grant money. But grandparents, to hit that $200,000, other family members can put in birthday presents or inheritances or whatever. They can add to that as long as it stays at the $200,000 maximum. That said, I just lost my train of thought again. Is that when you take that out? Sorry. Yes. So you were talking about the 1.3 and the 2. RDSPs do not affect their ODSP benefits. So that's something in particular as well, because other types of inheritance they do. It scales back the amount that the individual will receive through ODSP, but the RDSP and also anything in a Henson trust are exempt from affecting their income. So
yeah,
that's why these are so great,
income, right? So that's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad I gave this presentation because I learned something from you, Melissa. Thank you.
I have a question. I'm not sure if anyone knows. What are the withdrawal rules? What are the restrictions on percentage of the account? Are there any? I went for an RESP, for example. You have to justify your withdrawal. How does withdrawal work?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
I wasn't sure if
I didn't get that far in my
anyone
research.
knew, but I think it's important if someone's going to do this that they understand how withdrawal works. Because, for instance, my RESP example, you have to have a qualifying program. You can only withdraw a certain amount at certain times. I think it's important people understand how getting the money out works, not just getting it in.
Just to
Look at
say,
that.
I do know a little bit that it has to start being withdrawal at the age of 59. It can start, if you would withdraw before that, is it 49 or 59, where you have to pay back some of the contributions. So if you were to liquidate that, in the case of like a lot of people in my community, what happens if the individual passes away before it is used? So the question is, can that be transferred to an RRSP for a parent, or how can that work? Yes, it can be taken out, it can be transferred, but you have to pay back the amount if it's taken out before the maturation, which I think is 50. Is it 59 or 49?
Well, 59 is when you can stop making contributions.
You can't make
So,
any more after that.
Presumably after that,
Yeah.
when the 1 year it says bonds can be received until the beneficiary turns 49.
Yeah.
But I think you can continue.
The biggest
Grants
thing
are
about it, though,
saying-
is
Yeah, you can contribute until age 59. So
Right.
presumably after that was when they would expect.
we have to start taking out. And then at that point, it's with a financial advisor, and it's really looking at like, what is the length of lifespan, at the age of 60? Like, is this individual relatively healthy? It has a disability, but is relatively healthy. You want that money to last, let's say, 30 years. If that's not the case, you can take out. So I don't think there's maximums on amount that can be taken out if it's used directly by the individual that is using it. So unlike the RRSPs, it's a little bit different that way because they look at lifespan. So I'm assuming there's some, and keep in mind, this is a relatively new program. It was only started in like 2007 or 8. Jim Flaherty was a big push for this program. And so I don't know that we've had that many individuals hit this age of, it's still a relatively new program. I think, obviously some people are withdrawing, but that idea of like, what does it take to prove that your individual needs it, like more money right now versus spread that out over 30 years. I don't know if there's another form you have to fill out or whatever. It's more flexible than other types of RRSPs.
I was thinking maybe some people don't have a 59-year lifespan who have medically limiting conditions, so it doesn't make sense to me that they would have to wait to 49 or 59 when they may not have a lifespan that long.
More of a comment. Thank you. Henson Trust is so important. I actually would like to recommend that if we can source a financial advisor who's familiar with disability tax credits, setting up trusts, that kind of thing, I think would be very beneficial to anyone who's watching this and members of this community, because it can take like about a year to set all this stuff up properly for your kids, and it's very complicated. And sometimes you have to hire outside companies to manage this stuff because there's conflicts of interest with children and family members and all that stuff. So it's not cut and dry, but I think this is a really important topic that I think would be really beneficial for this group, if not this year, then to put on the agenda for next year. Thank you, Erin.
Any more questions or comments? Okay. Thank you very much, Erin. It was fascinating. I think highlights just one more thing that parents have to grapple with and understand. It's interesting that there's the ability to go back in time. Do you know if there's a limit on that at all? How many years? It's 5. Okay. So if a parent finds out when a child's 15, then they're still only able to go back 5. Is that?
I don't know. I gave 5 as an example. I don't know if that's. I think.
I think it's not that long because I had elderly family members apply recently, 2 of them, and I don't think they got more than 2 or 3 years. And they've had the conditions longer than that. I don't know if they didn't try and go back farther than that, but for them, they only got a few years. one of them maybe was 7, but it was not as long as they'd had the condition, so they're, we'll see. But it doesn't just apply to kids. Older people can also go back. So it's not limited to just children going back.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. It was a great idea and made for some great discussion. So appreciate it. So we'll move on now to talk about the special education plan. That was attached to the email that was sent out with the agenda for the meeting. We're going to have some time now to discuss, opportunity to ask questions of staff in advance of, we are voting in June. Is that correct? So the SEAC meeting at the beginning of June, SEAC will actually be voting on the education plan. So, or sorry, special education plan. So tonight is our opportunity to discuss, ask questions, get some more information. For committee members who have reviewed past plans, Appendix O, which is pages 132 to 139, has a nice summary of all the changes that have been made since last year by section as you go through. So we're going to, Superintendent Roddick, if you had anything to add, go ahead, and then we'll break out and have some discussion time.
Super. So the special education plan this year, we're in a much better situation than what we went through last year for those who were on SEAC. Knowing last year we faced a significant budget shortfall and had to look at program efficiencies and priorities. So that is not the case this year, although we don't have our budget yet. We are expecting a status quo budget, and so that is really reflected in the special education plan, that it's largely a status quo. But I am going to walk through some key highlights around changes, but not driven by budget, but more driven by some of the ongoing work. Superintendent Nguyen will be here at our next meeting in June to present, hopefully, the budget. Hopefully we will have more information than we do now, but hopefully we'll have the grants from the ministry. So typically these two things would come together at this time of the year, but because of the delays with the government, we're proceeding with this introduction to the special education plan now, but then an opportunity to reflect on it over the next 2 weeks. Our next meeting is, I think, June 3rd, at which time you'll vote support or non-support for the plan. And at any time, an association or a member at large can submit a minority report. So if there's something that you want appended to the plan that reflects your association or your stance on what's in the plan or not in the plan, there's certainly an opportunity to do that as well. So a couple of the key things I want to draw your attention to in Standard 5, that's on page 33. In the IPRC process, we removed what's called the location request form. And that this was a form that families submitted, and it was a bit of a misnomer because it gave the impression that families were choosing a location, but really they were just expressing an interest or a request for a certain type of self-contained placement, which the IPRC documentation does for them. So it was a bit of a duplication of paperwork. So we've simply eliminated that extra step. So the location request form is no longer submitted by parents, but the IPRC documentation is submitted with parents by the school. Once is Standard 6, that's page 45. There's a section on screening for giftedness, and there's a line that's been added around the validity of results may be impacted by non-novel material. And this is really responding to an uptick that we're seeing around students preparing for the CCAT. That's a I appreciate that, Kate. I know ABC really represents our gifted students, but we do have businesses that are running in communities to prep students for the test so that they will get a high score, which isn't necessarily an indication of giftedness, but simply an indication that someone has really rehearsed that test. So we don't have a necessarily a one size fits all response when a student indicates that the material is not novel. We'll kind of deal with that on a case-by-case basis. In Standard 6, in the well-being, on page 51, the role of the Child and Youth Counselor, the CYC, has been evolving over the last number of years. A CYC is not a registered health practitioner, and they don't have a regulatory body or a college that supervises them. And so we've been really, or the Student Wellbeing Department has really been examining what is the role of a CYC compared to a social worker who is supervised by a college and is a registered health practitioner. And so the scope of what a CYC can do has been adjusted slightly in this section. So most of their work is doing whole class tier 1 mental health support and well-being support, or sometimes tier 2, so small group. But the tier 3 one-to-one individual clinical support is done by the social worker. In some circumstances, the CYC can do one-to-one support in a non-clinical way. But really the role of the CYC has been redefined a little bit in that section. In that same section, something that has been removed from the plan is a team called BEHR, B-E-H-R. It's a Black Equity Human Rights team. And this was a group of clinicians, social workers, who would support students with particular identities. And it has really served and supported many students over the last few years that it's been in existence. But based on some consultation with experts in the community, the Student Wellbeing Department has decided to merge more of that crisis intervention into the Tragic Events Response Team, which is a group of student wellbeing members, CYCs, and social workers who will go to a school where there's been a tragic event. So it could be a significant racist or event like that, or when there's a death or an injury of a student or a staff member, this team goes in and supports the community in navigating the complex emotions that are involved. So merging the BEHR team with the Tragic Events Response Team for those really high-level incidents, but also partnering with community agencies such as ROC and then organizations for specific identities to support the community of students, as well as now really equipping all of our social workers and CYCs to support students with identities. So they're really shifting the model a little bit now that the expertise has grown on the team. In Standard 12, the staffing levels on page 84. I'm happy to say that there's no change to our EA allocation for next year, so we're maintaining 905 full-time equivalents. Our self-contained classes, we build our self-contained classes based on demand, so the number of families that request a self-contained class through IPRC, and those are largely status quo. We are seeing a slight decrease in our ARC classes. Those are our classes for students with learning disabilities. This year we have 22 classes, and next year we will have 16. And I really believe that this is because we have gotten so good at providing a tier 3 reading intervention in the home school that families are seeking a self-contained placement less often because the type of support that they want is being offered by the school. And then we've seen a slight increase to our CPE, so that's what we used to call our life skills class. So we have 38 this year, and it's growing to 40 next year, and that's really just a reflection of the influx of students into our system with those needs. Also in Standard 12 on page 89, the job description of the educational assistant has been tweaked, and you might recall, I think it was in March when Conan presented to SEAC around how we're shifting the language, not so much the role of the EA, but we're kind of catching up the job description to how we are using EAs, which is really responding to the physical safety needs as well as the total care needs and communication, and a real emphasis on a shared support model. So where possible, where it makes sense in terms of the needs of the student and the configuration of the school, that the school is to cluster kids together to maximize that EA support. So that language is updated in that section to reflect that information that Conan brought to SEAC. In Standard 14, the SEA allocation. This is very complicated for me, Conan, and I might just have you fix what I'm about to say. But this is really driven by a change in how the ministry funds our special oh my gosh, what does SEA even stand for? Special equipment allowance, special equipment allowance. So when students receive any kind of mobility equipment or hearing equipment or a laptop for assistive technology, it goes through the SEA fund. And it used to be that the ministry covered anything beyond the initial $800. So the board paid the first $800 of a piece of equipment, and then the rest we could submit through the SEA fund. Now the ministry has eliminated that minimum amount that this board pays, and that we have a base allocation that we can access for items that are $5,000 and less through this base funding, or anything above that $5,000. It goes through a claims-based approach. So we submit it to the ministry for approval and then get hopefully reimbursed if it gets approved. Another change is we don't necessarily need a prescription. So it used to be that a student had to have a full assessment with a recommendation within that psychoeducational assessment for that particular piece of equipment. That's no longer needed. We just simply need a recommendation at a school resource team meeting by one of our professionals. So certainly an elimination of some red tape through all of that. One of the pitfalls is we're seeing some things that used to be covered are no longer covered. So our favorite example is a swing. So some of our students really benefit from these large swings where they get some sensory feedback, and the ministry isn't necessarily covering the cost of those. And they can be quite costly. And so we are really navigating case by case and working on solutions, whether it's coming from our board budget or other sources. But we are really focused on meeting the needs of the kids, whether it's through the SEA claims or through our other budget sources. So those are the kind of the high level changes. The rest of the changes are really, kind of some language tweaks here and there. But those are the substantive changes in the plan this year.
Nothing on note of the changes, but I did notice on page 89, I don't know if it looks like there's an extra space just under the professional services consultant team. I don't know if one was accidentally deleted or if there was just an extra space added right in the middle.
Okay, thanks. I think Laura will note that and fix that in our final version. Thank you. Thanks for catching that.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Ruddick. So are we now breaking into discussion groups?
Yeah, Kate, did you want to make a comment before we break into groups?
Only that around the non-novel material, I would like to see. I know that you're saying that you deal with it on a case-by-case basis. I would like to be able to get messaging out within our community, because I knock that down, to be clear. I have to knock that down sometimes. And it isn't, I want to also be clear that it isn't necessarily meant maliciously. Usually these are parents who absolutely faithfully believe that their children need identification and are afraid that they won't get it. So I don't want to demonize the parents. But it is something that is a problem and that we do have to discourage. And having wording that helps us to get that message out, that preparation doesn't help kids, is really important. And I have tried to come up with my own wording for how I communicate that, understanding where the parent is coming from, and that it is usually a place of fear that their child will not get services that they believe that the child needs, or that that their kid has some reason, maybe an additional learning need, where they think they won't be able to present well, anxiety during the test or whatever, and they feel preparing them will set them up to manage the situation. But I need the support to point to specific information about why this is a problem. Like that, I think that needs to be getting to families about why preparation is both not necessary and harmful. And it's actually not a hard thing to explain to parents, and they usually understand once it's explained why it isn't necessary to prepare and why it doesn't help. But parents often don't get that, and it really is anxiety based in my experience of when I've had to talk to parents about that when they're trying to figure out how to prepare their children.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kate. I think we send a letter home, Conan, correct me if I'm wrong, to grade 4 parents. So maybe we could work together on some wording in that letter around, kind of alleviating those concerns and addressing it. What we don't want is kids to be punished when they say, "Hey, I've seen this before." So we want to be delicate about it. For some kids, it wouldn't make a difference if they studied or didn't study, but for other kids, it can make a difference. So yeah, okay.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
I just had a question, just a difference. I work at the Peel District School Board and was a teacher of gifted education for a long time. So I'm just curious in Halton, if the school CCAT doesn't have the student identifying high enough, let's say they're in the 91st percentile, but the family goes to a private clinic and comes back with a different number, let's say, how do you sort of navigate that issue?
Yeah, great question. So we do accept outside assessments because we know that test on that given day in school is a snapshot, right? And there are lots of contributing factors to a student perhaps not showing their full abilities on that given day. So we do accept outside assessments. It has to be a different assessment than what was conducted. Unless it's more than a year. So if it's within the year, it's considered invalid because it's not novel material. But if it's outside of a year, or if it's a different type of assessment than what was done the first time, then we absolutely respect those outside assessments.
I mean, what if the discrepancy is like very high? Just from my experience, and I taught to the elder age, like grade 8 gifted, and I had some students identified in, they were in first or second grade. And by the time they got to grade 8, they could tell they weren't truly sort of that unique learning style. And yet they were, young, precocious, or early readers, precocious, etc. And I harp back to this anxiety parents feel about, this test. And I just think sometimes parents unwittingly hurt kids by, gaining this identification when it might not be accurate, and by the time they get to the older grades, if that continues. So I was just curious how, so it's like a acceptance no matter what, as long as it's within those parameters.
Yes, and as long as it's done, the assessment is done by a registered practitioner that is recognized by the College of Psychologists, then our team respects that report. Absolutely.
So if there are no other questions in the big room, we'll split ourselves into smaller groups, go into breakouts. Okay.
Okay, so actually we're going to be one larger group, and Conan's going to take the online group because it's a little awkward.
give you a second to get us back on those. Okay, so we're back after a nice discussion about the special education plan. Again, a reminder that SEAC will be reviewing and voting on the plan at the next meeting, which is on June 4th. So we'll move on now to 2.3, which is the proposed dates for SEAC meetings in 2025-2026. So again, I just have to open that up myself. Attached to the email with the agenda was a list of proposed dates for SEAC meetings from September to June of next school year. There has been effort made to set dates that do not conflict with the board's days of significance. I think, am I using the right term? Obviously avoid winter break, March break, that kind of thing. So at this point, if there are any issues, conflicts, or anything that anyone wanted to raise about any of those dates, anything that may have been overlooked in terms of the timing. And if there are no concerns or issues, then those are the dates that we'll go ahead and set for our meetings for next year. Next year will be the final term of this SEAC, which is kind of amazing for anyone who's, who's been here for the full term. Yeah. We're coming into the last year of this term of SEAC. Again, we are meeting on Wednesdays now, aiming for the third Wednesday of every month. Okay, so we'll move on now to item 3, which is our discussion and question period. If anyone has any specific questions or topics that they would like to raise for our just anything in the realm of SEAC, this would be a great time to do it. Any questions for staff? Go ahead, Aaron.
As I was looking through the plan and I went down a rabbit hole, I was looking at the regulations and I was looking at the issue of quorum for our meetings, because I know that I think last year we had to skip a meeting because we didn't meet quorum. And I thought that I read I think I recall that someone saying after that meeting that if you have an association member and an alternate, both of them count as members of SEAC, even though there's only one vote between them, and that in calculating the quorum for our meetings, they count as 2 people. So you have to have a majority of all of the members, including staff and trustees, and so that's almost like a negative thing to have an alternate because it increases the quorum requirement. But I didn't get that from reading the regulations. Like, you need a quorum of members, but it doesn't really say that like an alternate is considered a fully fledged member. I was more just raising that to ease the administrative burden on us. Hopefully, if we could, but maybe there's something I'm missing in there.
No, and I think it was when we were reading our governance policy that it was very ambiguous, and then we went to the regulation and we landed at the same interpretation as you did. So that's how we're counting quorum now.
Oh, okay.
Is by association and members at large. So one representative from each association and members at large. So half of that would be quorum, or 50% plus 1, as opposed to the total membership of SEAC. So,
okay, great.
So completely agree, Aaron. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Carol, I don't know if you saw Kate's hand before. Did you want to make a comment about the dates, Kate?
I have yet to go through, I'm sorry I didn't get the chance to for the meeting, but there's probably at least 2 Wednesdays in that list that I will not be able to attend. If they could get moved even to a different Wednesday, that increases the chance that I can continue in my position next year, because I find it really frustrating, especially because I don't have an alternate yet, to be missing meetings and doing my job of being here when I right off the bat cannot attend some of the meetings since it's moved to Wednesday. I'll send a message to Laura maybe and let her know which ones are not good for me. I don't know if anyone's going to do anything about it, but there's going to be, I'm sure, at least 2 on that list that I will not be able to attend.
Okay, so I know that when the meeting dates are set, there's consideration of other board meetings and committee meetings, I guess would be, and then other staff commitments. So I would say that if anyone discovers that there's conflicts like that, that you know at this point to send those to Laura, that's okay. And then that can be considered in reviewing the dates and just see if that can be accommodated. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on now to item 4.1, which is the superintendent's report. There has been a written report included in the email for this meeting from Superintendent Ruddick, and I will ask Colette to provide a brief summary and then open the floor for any questions or comments.
Thank you. And I've already spoken to the budget piece already, so I won't repeat that. And the other item was just a reminder about the special athletics track meet. You're all welcome to join. Drop by at any point over the course of the day. It starts at 10:30, goes till about 1 on June 13th at Garth Webb. An amazing, amazing day. So by all means, you're welcome to come out and say hello and see our families and our kids and staff. It's a really wonderful experience.
Okay, not seeing any questions. We'll move on to association reports. Please raise your hand if you'd like to share anything from your association this evening.
Okay, I'm actually going to share my screen. Just a second. Nope, sorry. Just really carefully. Hopefully that works. Oh. Sorry. Why can't I? Oh. I don't want to do that. Sorry. Just 1 second. All right. So it's my yearly presentation. I'm going to be really quick about it. Most of you have heard this before, but as the Easter Seals representative, it is that time of year where it's Red Shirt Day coming up next week, and Red Shirt Day is a day to identify kids with physical disabilities and the challenges that they face. I'll show you the website. The website's amazing for Easter Seals. It's a just amazing organization. But just really quickly, there's some fact sheets about the disability, and I shared this with Laura, so it's going to be in the minutes. But an estimated 1 in 5 Canadians identify somebody as having a physical disability that affects their daily life, and that sort of goes. We're not just dealing with students in the board, but we're dealing with people as they age as well, and so support for people with disabilities. I've said this a million times. It's not till you have a child in a wheelchair where you realize how many stores have a lift that's this high and you're tipping, and there's tipping, there's little things on a wheelchair that prevent it from tipping. So then you can't get in as much as they say, well, we're on the first floor, Even a dentist, she's like, you have to come in through the back way, through the back, I'm coming in through the staff eating room to access the clinic or whatever. So, I don't wish this upon anybody, but as your parents get older and you start to see a little bit more of the physical challenges that people with physical disabilities face every day. So it's a good day to bring awareness. So on the website this year, of course, these aren't going to come up. They're really just amazing. So the first video is 26 minutes. We won't watch that, but it's really great. And I certainly share this with students at our schools, and I've sort of spread this around just for kids to recognize. But there's also these short sort of chapter videos, which I think are great as well, because they're just sort of 5 minutes long, and it just gives, this one, I'll just show you like this one. And just introduces students to kids.
And I am a student in grade 7. Now, let's take some time to hear from Grayson and his mom, Linda. to learn about how we can support students with disabilities.
My name is Linda Cluche. My youngest son's name is Grayson. He's 8 years old and he attends James R. Henderson Public School. He is in grade 3. Grayson has a rare chromosome disorder. So it is the deletion of his 15th chromosome inherited from mom. So that is called Angelman syndrome. He has seizures. He's nonverbal and does not have the ability to walk on his own. With the devices that Grayson has, and he's very lucky that he has quite a few options to choose from, this allows him to not only attend school, but to actually participate in school, just like his peers.
So there you go. So it is actually very sort of friendly for school boards to show. It's not, their goal is to like work together. So it's, a good place for kids to see themselves in that. So different videos. So I suggest if you work with students or you know any educators, even I would go, I have a link to the website and just all of the things that they can get involved with on this day. Oh, I'm not showing that screen. That's weird. Okay. Anyways, moving on. Nope. It's going to go. I know, they're all playing at once. Okay, there we go. So it's actually May 28th, Wednesday, May 28th is the Red Shirt Day, and they encourage you by way of posting on social media. You can tag your support, wear a red shirt. It doesn't obviously have to say, you can purchase these from Easter Seals if you would like, accessibility, inclusion, and equity. But even so, just wearing a red shirt, I know there's a lot of shirt days, but the end of May tends to be for people with physical disabilities. So I won't go into the whole presentation, but just if you don't know much about it, I just sort of broke it down into the different elements that Easter Seals helps with. So assistive and adaptive technology, they're huge at supporting, offsetting the cost of mobility equipment. So up to $3,000 a year families can receive to modify things for their home. And that is not income dependent. It's one of the few that is not. And so we've used that several times to put in a stair chair, to modify a washroom, to build a ramp up the side of the home. So families don't know that there's money there up to $3,000 a year. And there's no lifetime maximum until they go to 18. But so there's lots of funding there for that. Education and training, just supporting youth in different kind of jobs and occupations. Easter Seals, I think everybody is aware of a lot of the sports programs they put on and a lot of the clubs and things that they support, especially sledge hockey. They're very big in the sledge hockey community, especially up here in Oakville. But they have lots of different activities and leisure activities that people can get involved in. Rehab and occupational therapy is another one. Residential and respite programs, so not everywhere across the country, but these are just 3 examples of homes that provide respite. And we know that it's essential for families to have respite opportunities to keep themselves going, but also for the individuals as well. So it's a great programs, and they have big summer camps. So they have a big one at Woodin, did I say that right? In southwestern Ontario, and they have them all throughout Canada, or not all throughout. I think there's 6 in Canada. So 1 in the Maritimes, 1 in Quebec, 1 in Ontario, and students apply and they get to go to camp completely subsidized. So it's a really great program. And the Access To program, I'm not sure if everybody knows about that as well, but that's amazing when your loved one has a support worker that goes with them. So gaining access to the card allows them entrance along with their support worker into lots of different things like movies, museums. Ripley's was involved for a while. It does change from time to time, but if they have this card, they gain free access into all of these different things. So it really helps post-school once they've, they're no longer in school and they have maybe a support worker that takes them on outings, that this card is really useful. And again, I don't think enough people really know about it. So yeah, that's it, I think so. So it's all, yes, they have a travel card as well. I've never used it, so I'm not really sure too much about it, but I think it gives, people just that heads up with support. I think it just alerts the, via rail and things like that, that somebody with a disability is embarking, and so they have a personnel there to help them as they do. So I know like reduced fare, I know like with the airlines, you know, the companion, there's something called a companion fare where a support worker would fly for free, but only if the individual paid full price for the seat, which nobody does. So it's not as, you know, airlines aren't as easy, but definitely I've never tried it on the train or the bus, but it might be something to look into. So there you go. So wear a red shirt Wednesday the 28th.
I'd say on the GO train, if you go to one of the GO offices, you can get a disability sticker for your Presto card or just to carry around with you, and then a companion can travel free with you.
Oh, okay.
You just go ask for it.
Yeah.
There's no.
And it goes on the individual's Presto card, and
yeah.
the companion is, yeah.
Yeah, so for my daughter, we have one, and it's just on her Presto card, and so if she has to, for example, we go into sick kids often for her appointments, and so one of us goes with her, and then we don't pay for it because she's got her card and she's allowed to have a companion with it. So
yeah, that's great.
Also, I'll add, since we're talking about travel, the sunflower lanyard, if you're traveling with children or adults or anyone with a disability, it's a really good visible marker for saying, I need special assistance, and it might not necessarily be a visible disability. So someone who's, you know, nonverbal or someone who has seizures or something like that, you can wear the lanyard, and it's really rolled out internationally now, especially for air travel. And that's free. You can get it through Pearson.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Are there any other reports from associations or announcements? No? Okay. So we'll move on to item 4.3, the trustees report, and I'll ask trustee Jinyi Zhang to do that for us. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a reminder. HDSB sends several emails about information session. So at this time, that the HDSB and Halton region public health are hosting a joint information session to raise awareness about the impact of vaping on the youth and how parents and guardians can support their children. There are 4 in-person information sessions are scheduled between May 27th and June 3rd in 4 cities. So each city has 1 in-person session, and the registration deadline is tomorrow. So, because there are several emails already sent out to parents, so maybe parents don't see it, and just don't miss this email. And if you cannot find it, just search HDSB vaping and the e-cigarette webpage. The links are there. Okay, this is the first one, and the second one is the coming weekend is the Toronto Doors Open. This is the day. So every year we encourage the parents and guardians to bring the children to Toronto to see the different historical buildings and to see this is our local history. As a proud Canadian, we should know our history. Also, there's a lot of guided tour to see different community organizations, so we can together to celebrate the cultural diversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll move on now to committee reports. So we have members who sit on a couple of standing committees. The first, the Accessibility and Coordinating Committee. Yes, okay. I sit on it as a trustee, but you sit on the committee as, so I'll let you go ahead and talk about it.
Well, I have not attended a meeting yet. We have one in person tomorrow at a school in Milton. It's physically on site, and I will give you an update in June.
Thank you. And the Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy Steering and Advisory Committee. That's a mouthful. Kate.
They canceled our meeting because they said they had enough information from us and they didn't need to consult us anymore. I'm not sure how to take that. Probably positively that we had already given them so much valuable information that they didn't need any more. So there will be one more meeting in June to do the final approval of the revised plan. And I think it'll be focused on the rollout, because it's a 3-year plan, and then there's individual year, like the first year that they're going to target for next year. I think that's what we're doing next time. But yes,
Thank you very much. That's a good thing, I think. It sounds like a good thing. Yes. So we're now at item 5, which is the next agenda order paper. We chatted earlier about a future agenda, possibly having a little bit more information on disability sports and that kind of thing, and investments and financial aspects. So we've got that recorded. Is there anything else that anyone would like to suggest for either upcoming meeting, or we have a year coming next school year of meetings as well?
I would. This probably be for next year. And sorry, Sierra. I'd love to know more about kind of what that looks like for our students when they're getting to the end of their career with, or their time with us in Halton District School Board. I'd like to know what programs are available, and I'm sure that would be valuable for us to know as SEAC. So if you could plan that for next year, that would be great.
Just to jump on board with that too, it's like, I think as parents, we all know there's day programs out there, but I think the hardest thing is like, what's the wait time? How easy is it to get into like those programs? Exactly. Exactly, because everybody's eligible in the school system, and we just take that for granted. And sort of as they graduate and think like, what do you mean I have to wait for this, or I have to pay privately, or it changes. So that information would be really useful too, along with that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I can also talk about, even post-secondary opportunities that are available to students as well. For instance, I had a meeting with Mohawk College last week who mentioned that they actually have a residence available for individuals with developmental disabilities who are in the CPP or CICE programs. So they can have the experience of living on residence on campus with other students while still having the support available to them.
Okay, were there any other ideas, suggestions? So if you ever think of anything in between meetings, please send an email and share that. And all ideas are noted, and then help with agenda setting for upcoming meetings. So we are at our final item, which is adjournment. So we've exhausted the agenda. So I'd like to thank everyone who joined us in person, and Trustee Ahmed, who was with us online. We look forward to seeing everyone at the next meeting, which is June 4th at the usual time of 7 p.m. Thank you, and good night.